He smiled before the fourth dive. An 11-year-old homeless boy, hypothermic, exhausted, already drowning, and he smiled. Because he knew he wasn't coming back up. He'd made peace with dying for 3 children he'd never met. His heart stopped for 4 minutes. They shocked him 5 times. But the real nightmare wasn't the lake. It was what drove him there. A children's home that buried 47 abuse complaints. A murdered 9-year-old whose death was ruled accidental. A system so broken that 1,600 bikers had to ride across America to protect one boy the government had thrown away. The ice cracked like a gunshot. 11-year-old Jaden Cole heard it before he saw anything. That sharp splitting sound that turns an ordinary Tuesday into a nightmare. He was crouched behind the maintenance shed near the boat launch of Lake Harrison, fingers blue inside torn gloves, trying to disappear into the frozen landscape the way he'd learned to disappear everywhere else. Then came the screaming. His head snapped toward the lake. 3 kids, 2 boys and something smaller. A toddler in a pink snowsuit stumbling on the ice near the eastern shore. The part where the current runs underneath. The part every local knows to avoid. These kids didn't know. The older boy went through first. 1 second standing, next second gone, the ice swallowing him like a hungry mouth. The second boy lunged to grab him. Mistake. The surface shattered beneath his weight. And the little one in pink just stood there screaming until the crack spiderweb toward her and she dropped straight down into black water. 3 children, 3 splashes, 90 seconds until brain death. Jaden was already running. He didn't think, didn't calculate. His coat hit the snow, then his hoodie, the January air attacking his bare chest like razors. Wet clothes would drag him down. He'd learned that in the fountains. He'd learned everything in the fountains. Adults on the shore stood frozen. A woman in red screaming into her phone. A man in a business suit paralyzed mid-step. 2 teenagers filming on their phones, filming while children drowned. Nobody moved to help. Jaden's feet hit the ice. He ran in that shuffling slide he'd perfected crossing frozen parking lots to reach heated dumpsters behind restaurants. Light feet. Spread the weight. Don't stop. The first hole gaped ahead like a wound in the world. He dropped to his stomach, crawled the last 10 feet, looked down into water so black it seemed to swallow light itself. Somewhere in that darkness, a child was dying. 47 seconds. The older boy had been under for 47 seconds. Jaden filled his lungs and dove. The cold hit him like a fist made of glass and darkness and death. Every nerve fired at once. His heart stuttered, skipped, hammered against his ribs like something trying to escape. This wasn't temperature anymore. This was violence, the lake trying to kill him before he could save anyone. But Jaden Cole had been training for this moment his entire life. He just hadn't known it. His hands found fabric in the blackness. Small body. Limp. The middle boy, Connor, though Jaden didn't know names yet. He grabbed the collar and kicked upward, fighting against muscles that screamed to stop, against cold that turned his blood to sludge. They broke the surface together. Jaden gasped, hauled the boy onto the ice, shoved him toward the adults who were finally moving. Help him. The woman in red crawled onto the ice, reaching for Connor. Good enough. Jaden looked at the hole. 61 seconds. The older boy had been under for 61 seconds now. Brain damage starts at 90. Death follows shortly after. He dove again. The second dive was worse. His body remembered the trauma, tried to shut down before it could be hurt again. Jaden ignored it. Pushed through darkness so complete he couldn't see his own hands. Pushed through cold that made his bones ache like they were cracking from the inside. Found him. Ethan, 10 years old, though Jaden didn't know that either, was sinking. His movements had slowed to almost nothing, arms drifting like seaweed, eyes half closed. Hypothermia pulling him down into that quiet place where dying feels like falling asleep. Jaden wrapped an arm around the boy's chest and kicked. His legs were concrete. His lungs were fire. Black spots danced at the edges of his vision, and somewhere in his oxygen-starved brain, a calm voice said, "You're not going to make it. You're going to die down here with him." He kicked anyway. They broke the surface. Jaden gasped, choked, shoved Ethan toward the reaching hands. Adults everywhere now. The man in the business suit finally moving, a paramedic who'd appeared from somewhere, voices shouting over each other. 2 down. 1 left. The little girl. The one in pink. She'd been under for 90 seconds now. "Kid, get out of there." The paramedic was screaming at him. "You need to get out now, you're hypothermic." Jayden heard him, understood him, knew he was right. He looked at the hole. 90 seconds meant brain damage. 90 seconds meant even if he pulled her out, she might never wake up, might spend her life staring at nothing, might be alive but not living. The math said to stop. Jayden dove. The third dive should have killed him. His muscles spasmed with every movement. The water was so dark he was swimming blind, feeling for fabric, for flesh, for the tiny body of a 2-year-old girl who had no business being in this frozen hell. His lungs were empty. He'd breathed out too much on the surface, had maybe 60 seconds of air instead of 4 minutes. His hand brushed something soft. Pink fabric. The snowsuit. Jayden grabbed, pulled, wrapped his arms around the tiny body and kicked upward with everything he had left, which wasn't much. His vision tunneled. White spots now, not black. His arms wouldn't lift properly, but he kicked. His head broke the surface. He gasped, but nothing came in. His lungs had forgotten how to work. He held the girl above water with arms that were failing, face going under, darkness pulling. Hands. Someone's hands on his arms, pulling, lifting. "I've got her. Get the boy." The girl was gone, pulled from his grip, and Jayden sank. This is it, he thought. This is how it ends. Drowning in the same lake where I saved them. Alone, like always. But then hands grabbed his collar and hauled him upward, dragged him over the edge of the ice, dropped him onto snow that felt warm compared to the water. The man in the business suit, William Chen, a 34-year-old accountant from Medina, who had frozen with fear earlier and would never forgive himself for those lost seconds. Jayden lay on the snow, shaking so hard his teeth cracked against each other. His vision was going white at the edges. His heart was doing something wrong. Too slow, then too fast, then nothing, then a flutter. He saw the little girl, pink snowsuit, blonde hair plastered to her head. A paramedic was doing chest compressions, counting out loud. She wasn't moving. No. No. Jayden tried to stand. His legs collapsed. He tried to crawl toward her, reaching. "Is she—" His voice was barely a whisper. "Is she alive?" The paramedic didn't answer. And then something misfired in Jayden's hypothermia-addled brain. A synapse crossed wrong. The scream he heard wasn't Chloe's. It was another child, still under the ice, still drowning, still needing to be saved. He was on his feet, stumbling toward the hole. "Hey, stop him! Someone stop!" Jayden dove a 4th time. Into water that shouldn't have been survivable anymore. Searching for a child that didn't exist. Swimming downward into darkness while his heart decided it had taken enough. And 12 feet beneath the surface of Lake Harrison, Jayden Cole's heart stopped beating. His body went limp. His eyes went blank. He began to sink toward the bottom of the lake, a boy who had saved 3 lives and was now giving his own in exchange. Above him on the surface, William Chen was already tearing off his jacket. Because some debts have to be paid immediately. Type hero in the comments if you're holding your breath right now. Jayden needs all the support he can get. Jayden Cole didn't remember his mother's face anymore. That was the cruelest part of grief. It didn't just steal people. It stole pieces of them, one memory at a time, until all you had left were fragments sharp enough to cut. He remembered her hands, thin fingers, always cold, always trembling from whatever she'd put in her veins that morning. He remembered her smell, cigarettes and cheap perfume and something sour underneath. He remembered her voice singing him to sleep, off-key and slurring but soft. What he remembered most was the morning she didn't wake up. Jayden was 8 years old. Room 117 of a motel off Interstate 94. Stained carpet, broken heater, a TV that got 3 channels. He woke because the room was too quiet. His mother always made noise. Coughing, muttering, shifting. The silence was wrong. He knew before he looked. Before he climbed out of his sleeping bag and walked to her bed and saw her lying there with her eyes half open and her lips blue. "Mommy?" Nothing. "Mommy, wake up." He shook her shoulder. Cold. So cold. Like lake water. Like January. The needle was still in her arm. Jayden sat with her body for 6 hours. He talked to her about school, about the book he was reading, about the dream he'd had. He held her cold hand and waited for her to wake up. She always woke up. Even when she was sick, even when she'd been gone for days, she always came back. Not this time. They found his father 3 weeks later. Derek Cole, living in Wisconsin with a new wife and a new baby. The phone call lasted 4 minutes. "I understand, Mr. Cole, but he's your son." "Yes, I'm aware." "No, that's not possible. He's a minor." "Mr. Cole, if you don't—" The social worker hung up. Looked at Jayden with that expression he'd come to know so well. The one that said, "I'm sorry, but—" "Your father isn't able to take you right now, sweetheart. But we've found a wonderful placement. St. Patrick's Home for Children. You'll be safe there." Safe. That word would become the darkest joke of Jayden's life. If you've ever felt abandoned by the system, type "I see you" in the comments. Jayden's story is about to get worse before it gets better. Director Dwayne Hammond ran St. Patrick's like a kingdom, his rules, his punishments. The first time he hit Jayden, the boy was 9 years old. He'd taken an extra slice of bread at dinner. His stomach had been cramping for days, and the smell of food made him desperate. Hammond called him to his office. Closed the door. Greedy children get corrected. The fist came fast. Then again. Then again. "This is for your own good. You'll thank me when you're older." Jayden learned the rules fast after that. Don't make eye contact. Don't speak unless spoken to. Don't complain about the food even when things crawled in it. Don't ask why donations meant for children disappeared into Hammond's accounts. And above all, don't tell. Because Jayden wasn't the only one. 47 complaints had been filed against Hammond over 19 years. 47 cries for help. 47 children who had tried to tell someone what was happening in that beautiful red brick building with the saint in the courtyard. 47 complaints. 0 consequences. The system had been designed to protect children. But systems are only as good as the people running them. And the person assigned to investigate St. Patrick's, a CPS investigator named Robert Hartley, had decided long ago that paperwork was easier than justice. The night Jayden ran, he was 11 years old with 2 black eyes from a beating that had nothing to do with bread. Another boy, Tommy Weston, had tried to report Hammond to a visiting inspector. Tommy disappeared to a foster placement upstate. And that night, Hammond gathered all the boys and made an example.
This is what happens when children forget the rules. At 3:17 a.m., Jayden climbed out a bathroom window and dropped 2 stories into a snowbank. Thin sweater, torn jeans, sneakers held together with tape. He ran and kept running for 3 years. 3 years of sleeping in parking garages and behind dumpsters. 3 years of learning which restaurants threw away food which shelters didn't report runaways, which cops would chase, and which would look away. 3 years of becoming invisible. But somewhere in those frozen years, Jayden discovered something that would save 3 lives and almost cost him his own. He could hold his breath longer than anyone he'd ever met. The downtown fountains taught him. Winter months when they were drained but still held inches of icy water and coins from summer tourists. He'd lower himself in and dive for quarters while his lungs burned. The first time, 45 seconds. By the end of year 1, 2 minutes. By year 3, 4 minutes. His body had learned to slow down, to stretch oxygen like it stretched everything else. Heart rate dropping, panic fading, sinking into a cold, quiet place where nothing hurt. 4 minutes of air. In the frozen fountains, that skill was worth maybe $20 on a good night. At Lake Harrison, it would be worth 3 lives, or 4, if someone pulled him out in time. Victor Sledge Brannon buried his wife on the coldest day in Minnesota history. January 15, 2016. 37 below zero. Cold enough to crack car engines and freeze tears to cheeks before they could fall. The gravediggers worked in shifts because their equipment kept dying. Rachel Brannon was lowered into frozen ground while her newborn daughter screamed in a carrier strapped to Victor's chest. Chloe had been alive for 19 hours. Her mother had been dead for 18. Complications during delivery, that's what the doctors called it. Placental abruption, hemorrhaging, emergency surgery 3 minutes too late. Victor remembered standing in the hospital hallway, still wearing his leather cut because he'd ridden straight from a club meeting when Rachel's water broke 5 weeks early. He remembered the surgeons shaking hands, the way the man couldn't meet his eyes. "Mr. Brannon, I'm so sorry. We did everything we could." Victor didn't cry. He couldn't. There was a 10-year-old and an 8-year-old in the waiting room who needed their father strong, a newborn who would never know her mother's voice. Crying was a luxury Victor couldn't afford. "Protect them," Rachel had whispered before surgery, her last words to him. "Whatever happens, protect our babies." "I will, I swear on my life." 2 years of keeping that promise. Driving Ethan to baseball, Connor to piano, Chloe to every pediatric appointment, sitting in parent-teacher conferences surrounded by suburban moms who saw his tattoos and leather and couldn't hide their fear. 2 years of holding it together. Then came a January 14th, 2018. The day before the 2nd anniversary of Rachel's death, the day everything shattered. Drop a comment if you're starting to feel the weight of what's coming. Victor has no idea his world is about to change forever. Morning started with Mickey Mouse pancakes. Ethan wanted chocolate chips. Connor wanted blueberries. Chloe wanted to throw pieces on the floor for Axel, the German shepherd who worshipped her. "Dad," Ethan looked up between bites. "Can we go to the lake today?" Victor's stomach tightened. Lake Harrison, where he'd proposed to Rachel 13 years ago. Snowflakes in her hair, down on one knee, her yes before he finished asking. He hadn't been back since the funeral. "I don't know, buddy, it's cold." "It's always cold. You always say no." Ethan's jaw set, Rachel's stubbornness looking back at him. Tommy Garrett's dad takes him ice fishing every weekend. 2 years of wrapping them in cotton, 2 years of saying no to everything risky. The club therapist said he was suffocating them. They need to live, not just survive. There's a difference. Maybe it was time. "Okay, but you stay on the shore. You don't go on the ice." At 10:30 a.m., Victor watched Marie, Ratchet's wife, drive away with his children. At 11:47 a.m., his phone rang. "Mr. Brannon?" Marie's voice strained and breaking. "You need to come to the lake right now. The ice, the kids." Victor was already running. The drive from his house to Lake Harrison was 7 minutes. He made it in 3. The Harley screamed through icy roads. He took corners at speeds that should have killed him. Nothing mattered except getting there. He saw the crowd first, then the ambulances, then his children. Alive, wrapped in blankets, breathing, all 3. Alive. His knees almost buckled. Then he saw the other one. A boy. Small, thin, blue-white skin against the snow. A paramedic doing chest compressions. "No pulse! Charging defibrillator!" "Clear!" The boy's body jerked. Nothing. "Again! Clear!" Another jerk. Nothing. Victor couldn't look away. He watched a child dying, a child he'd never met, on the snow where his own children had almost drowned. "Who is that?" His voice sounded far away. "Who is that kid?" Marie appeared beside him, Chloe wailing in her arms. "He saved them, Victor. He pulled them out. Went in 4 times. 4 times. 4 times. Clear!" Third shock. Nothing. "We're losing him!" Victor's body moved before his brain caught up. He grabbed the paramedic's shoulder. "Again! Sir, we've tried 3. He went in 4 times. You can shock him 4 times." The paramedic looked at his partner, at the monitor, at the desperation in Victor's eyes. "Charging. Clear." 4th shock. Nothing. "One more. Just one more." 5th shock. The boy's body arced. The monitor beeped. Once, twice, a rhythm. "We've got him. Move!" They loaded the boy into the ambulance. Sirens wailed. And Victor stood in the bloody slush where a stranger's child had died and come back and made a silent vow. Rachel had asked him to protect their children. This boy had done it for him. Whatever came next, Victor was going to make sure that boy never had to sacrifice himself again. Whatever it took. Subscribe now if you need to know what happens to Jaden. The story is far from over. The ambulance doors slammed shut on 2 children and one impossible miracle. Victor stood in the parking lot of Lake Harrison, watching the vehicle scream down County Road 7, sirens cutting through frozen air like a knife through silence. His children were inside those ambulances, Ethan and Connor in one, Chloe and the nameless boy in another. His phone hadn't stopped buzzing since he'd arrived. Dutch, Ratchet, Bones, Spider, the brothers always knew when one of their own was in trouble, some invisible network that connected them across miles and years. Victor answered on the 14th ring. "Talk to me." Dutch's voice was gravel and smoke. "They're alive, all three." Victor's voice cracked on the second word. "Some kid saved them, homeless, dove in 4 times. His heart stopped, Dutch. They brought him back, but where are you?" "Lake Harrison. They're taking everyone to Hennepin County Medical." "I'm 20 minutes out. Don't move." The line went dead. Behind Victor, police were cordoning off the broken ice. Paramedics packed equipment. The woman in red gave a statement with shaking hands. William Chen, the accountant who'd finally moved, who'd pulled Jayden from the water on that 4th dive, stood wrapped in an emergency blanket, staring at nothing. Victor approached him. "You pulled him out. The boy." Chen nodded. His teeth were chattering. "I froze. When the kids fell through, I couldn't move. I watched him dive 3 times while I stood there like a statue." His voice broke. "He was just a kid, smaller than my nephew, and he did what I couldn't. But you went in, at the end. After he'd already saved them, after he was already dying." Chen's eyes were hollow. "I'll never forget his face when he went under that 4th time. He smiled, like he knew he wasn't coming back up. And he jumped anyway." He smiled. Victor felt something shift in his chest, some understanding taking root. This wasn't a boy who had saved 3 lives on impulse. This was a boy who had chosen to die. And Victor needed to find out why. Type "why" in the comments if you're trying to understand what drove Jayden into that water 4 times. The answer will break your heart. The ride to Hennepin County Medical Center was a blur of frozen highways and prayers. Victor hadn't spoken in 2 years. He hadn't prayed since Rachel died, had tried in those first weeks, kneeling beside his bed, reaching for God or the universe or anything that might be listening. Nothing answered. The silence was so complete that Victor stopped trying. Now he prayed again. Not for himself. For a nameless boy with blue lips and a stopped heart. Please let him live. Please let him wake up. Please give me the chance to repay what he did. The hospital parking lot was chaos. 2 ambulances, 3 police cars, a news van already arriving. Victor pushed through the sliding doors. "My children, Ethan, Connor, and Chloe Brannon, Lake Harrison." The nurse's face softened. "Follow me." She led him through corridors that smelled of antiseptic and fear to a waiting area where Marie sat with red-rimmed eyes. "They're okay." Marie grabbed his arms. "All 3. Hypothermia, but no frostbite, no brain damage. The doctors say they were incredibly lucky." "The boy," Marie's face crumpled. "ICU. They're not sure if he's going to make it. His heart stopped for almost 4 minutes. Even if he survives, he might never wake up." 4 minutes without oxygen. Victor knew what that meant. Brain damage, permanent damage. The boy who had saved 3 lives might spend the rest of his as a vegetable. "I need to see him." "Victor, they won't let you." He was already walking. "ICU. Authorized personnel only." Victor pushed through anyway. A doctor intercepted him, young, tired, scrub-stained with something Victor didn't want to identify. "Sir, you can't—" "The boy from the lake. Where is he?" "Are you family?" "I'm the father of the 3 children he saved." Something shifted in the doctor's expression. Recognition. Or maybe pity. "Room 7. But I have to warn you, he's critical. Core temperature 81 degrees. Cardiac arrest for nearly 4 minutes. We've re-warmed him, stabilized his rhythm, but..." The doctor hesitated. "We won't know the full extent of neurological damage until he wakes up." "If he wakes up." If. Victor walked past him without another word. Room 7 was small and cold and filled with machines. Monitors beeped. Tubes ran from bags to thin arms. A ventilator hissed, pushing air into lungs that had forgotten how to breathe. And in the center of it all, barely visible beneath wires and tape, was a boy. Victor had seen him on the snow, had watched them shock his tiny body. But this was different. In the harsh fluorescent light, he could see things he'd missed before. The boy was small, too small for his age. Collarbones jutting like wings trying to escape his skin. Arms thin, marked with bruises, some fresh, some yellowed, some so old they were just shadows. His face was gaunt, cheekbones too sharp, eye sockets too hollow. This was a child who had been hungry for a long time, hungry and cold and hurt in ways that went far beyond hypothermia. Victor approached slowly, reached out and touched the boy's hand, still cold, like lake water, like January. "Hey, kid." His voice was barely a whisper. "I don't know if you can hear me, but I need you to know something." The monitors beeped. The ventilator hissed. "You saved my children, all three of them, my whole world. Everything I have left of my wife, of my life, of anything that matters." He squeezed the cold hand. "I don't know who you are. I don't know where you came from. But I'm going to find out. And whatever happened to you, whatever put those bruises on your arms and that hunger in your bones, it's over now. Do you understand?" No response. Just machines breathing for a boy who had given everything. "You're not alone anymore. I don't care what it takes. You gave everything for my kids, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you never have to give everything again." Victor stood there for a long time, watching, waiting, praying. And somewhere in the darkness of his coma, Jaden Cole heard a voice he didn't recognize, promising things he couldn't believe. 11:08. Hours until CPS decision. The clock started ticking the moment Jaden's heart started beating again. Victor didn't know about the clock yet. He only knew what Dutch told him at 9 p.m., standing in the ICU hallway while machines beeped behind them. His name is Jaden Cole, 11 years old, ward of the state since he was 8. Dutch kept his voice low. Ran away from St. Patrick's Home for Children in April 2015. Police have an open file, but nobody's actively looking. St. Patrick's, that's a group home? State-run facility for foster kids. Dutch's jaw tightened. There's more. The kind of more that's going to make you want to kill someone. Tell me. 47 complaints against the director. Physical abuse, neglect, inappropriate discipline. Not a single one stuck. Files just disappear. 47. Victor let that number burn into his chest. Someone's covering for him. Looks like. Dutch pulled out his phone. "I've got a brother in Wisconsin. Ghost. Ex-FBI Cyber Division. If anyone can dig up what's buried, it's him. Call him." "Already did. He's working on it now." Victor looked through the window into room 7. Jaden lay motionless, chest rising and falling with mechanical precision. Alive, but barely. Present, but absent. What happens if he wakes up? Dutch was quiet for a moment. He's still a ward of the state. Legally, St. Patrick's is his guardian. The moment he's medically cleared, CPS can reclaim him. Send him back? To the place he ran from? That's the system. Victor's hands clenched into fists. Then we need to prove that place is hell before he opens his eyes. If you've ever watched the system fail a child, type "broken system" in the comments. What happens next will make you furious. 8 hours until CPS decision. Ghost worked through the night. Marcus Webb had spent 14 years with the FBI's cyber division before a bullet in his spine ended his career. Now he lived in a cabin outside Madison, surrounded by servers and screens, helping people the system had failed. The Hells Angels had helped Ghost when no one else would. His daughter's stalker, a local cop protected by his badge, had been convinced to relocate to Alaska after a brief conversation with some concerned citizens. Ghost never asked what was said. He just knew that when Dutch called at 2 a.m., the answer was yes. "St. Patrick's Home for Children," Ghost murmured, fingers flying across keyboards. "Dwayne Hammond, director. Let's see what you're hiding." The first firewall fell in 11 minutes. Government-grade encryption, designed to stop teenagers and foreign hackers, not former FBI specialists with grudges. What he found made him want to vomit. 47 complaints. That was the official number. But Ghost found more. 65 additional reports deleted before they could be logged. Someone inside CPS was scrubbing records, making problems disappear. He dug deeper. 112 total reports of abuse, medical records showing emergency room visits for accidents, broken bones explained by falls, bruises attributed to rough play. Then he found the death. Michael Torres, 9 years old, died at St. Patrick's on March 3, 2014. Official cause: accidental fall downstairs. The autopsy photos told a different story. Wrong angle of impact for a fall. Bruising consistent with being grabbed, held, thrown. And there was a witness statement, a girl named Sarah Chen, who said she saw Director Hammond push Michael. That statement had been logged at 4:47 p.m. on March 5, 2014. By 4:52 p.m., it was deleted. By user R. Hartley, Robert Hartley, CPS investigator, the man responsible for protecting children at St. Patrick's, the man who had been helping Hammond bury them instead. Ghost lit a cigarette, watched the smoke curl toward the ceiling. One dead kid. 65 scrubbed complaints, one corrupt investigator, and a boy in a Minneapolis ICU who had run from that hell 3 years ago and was still fighting for his life. Ghost reached for his phone. Dutch? I found something. Everything. You're going to want to see this. 5 hours until CPS decision. At 3:47 a.m., Jaden's heart stopped again. Victor was half asleep in the chair beside the bed when the monitors screamed. Flatline. That terrible, endless tone that means death is winning. Nurses flooded the room. Someone pushed Victor back against the wall. V-fib! Get the crash cart! Charging to 200! Clear! Jaden's body arced off the bed. The monitor showed chaos, jagged lines, no rhythm. Nothing. Going again. Clear! Another arc, another chaos. Come on, kid, come on! Victor couldn't breathe, couldn't move, couldn't do anything but watch them shock this boy back to life a second time in 12 hours. Clear! Third shock. The monitor beeped, rhythm. Weak, thready, but present. We've got him. Sinus rhythm, he's back. The nurses exhaled. The doctor wiped sweat from his forehead, and Victor slid down the wall until he was sitting on the cold floor, hands shaking. How many times? He asked. His voice was raw. How many times has his heart stopped? The doctor looked at him with exhausted eyes. 3 times now, including the lake. He paused. Mr. Brannon, you should prepare yourself. Each cardiac arrest causes more damage. If there's a fourth. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. 2 hours until CPS decision. The file arrived at 6:17 a.m. Dutch found Victor in the hallway outside the ICU, clutching a cup of cold coffee like it was the only thing keeping him upright. Ghost came through. Dutch handed over a manila folder. Everything, every complaint, every cover-up, every kid who got hurt while the system looked the other way. Victor opened it. Read. His hands shook, his vision tunneled. Names, dates, injuries, deaths, a cascade of suffering that had been systematically ignored. They killed a kid, Dutch, 9 years old, made it look like an accident, and the investigator who was supposed to catch them, he buried it. I know. Jaden ran from this, spent 3 years on the streets because going back was worse than freezing to death. Victor's voice cracked. And if he wakes up, they're going to send him right back. Not if we stop them. Victor looked at his VP. 31 years of brotherhood. 31 years of loyalty, sacrifice, shared silence. How? Dutch smiled. Cold. Dangerous. Ghost found one more thing. Sandra Mitchell, Channel 5 News. She's been trying to investigate St. Patrick's for 2 years. Dead ends every time. Someone keeps blocking her. And now? Now we give her everything. Every document, every photo, every name. Dutch leaned closer. We blow this wide open. Make it so public that CPS can't sweep it under the rug. Make Jaden Cole the most famous kid in America. That exposes him. His whole life becomes public. It also protects him. Hard to disappear a kid when the whole world is watching. Victor looked through the window at Jaden's motionless form. The bruises, the bones, the machines keeping him alive. Make the call. Dutch nodded and pulled out his phone. The war had officially begun. Subscribe if you want to see justice delivered. The system is about to learn what happens when you mess with the wrong kid. For hours, CPS arrives. The first reporter arrived at 9:23 a.m., Sandra Mitchell. 43 years old, 17 years at Channel 5, a reputation for stories that made powerful people uncomfortable. She'd been investigating St. Patrick's for 2 years and hit nothing but walls. Now someone had handed her a sledgehammer. Mr. Brannon, she shook Victor's hand in the hospital cafeteria. Thank you for reaching out. When I got a call from a Hells Angels president, I wasn't sure what to expect. I'm not here about the club. I'm here about a boy named Jaden Cole. Victor slid the folder across the table. Sandra opened it, read. Her expression shifted, curiosity to confusion to horror to something colder. Professional. Where did you get this? Does it matter? If I'm putting it on air, yes. The records are real. Every complaint, every deleted file, the covered-up death, documented. My people can provide authentication. Sandra studied him. Why? What's your interest? That boy saved my 3 children, dove into a frozen lake 4 times while his heart stopped. He's fighting for his life right now because he decided my kids were worth dying for. Victor's voice was steady, but his hands shook. And the place he ran from, the place that was supposed to keep him safe, killed a 9-year-old and covered it up. You want me to expose it? I want you to tell the truth, all of it. Let the world decide what to do with both. Sandra closed the folder. This will make powerful people very uncomfortable. Good. And once it goes public, there's no controlling it. Jayden's past becomes public record. Every trauma, every hurt, people will know. Victor hesitated. This was the part that felt like betrayal. Jayden deserved privacy, deserved to heal without cameras in his face, but he also deserved protection. And sometimes the only way to protect someone was to drag their monsters into the light. I'll tell him everything when he wakes up, and if he hates me for it, I'll accept that. Victor met her eyes. But at least he'll be alive to hate me. Sandra stood. I need 24 hours to verify, get legal approval. You have 12. CPS is already sending someone to take him back. Her eyes sharpened. Then I'd better move fast. If you believe the truth should always come out, type truth in the comments. The clock is ticking. The story broke at 6:07 p.m. Sandra Mitchell had done her job perfectly. The segment opened with bystander footage from the lake, shaky video showing a small figure diving into black water again and again while adults stood frozen on the shore. Then came the pivot. But the story of Jayden Cole doesn't begin at Lake Harrison. Images of St. Patrick's appeared on screen. It begins here, in a facility that was supposed to protect vulnerable children, a facility with a deadly secret. The numbers appeared. 47, 65, 112, a mountain of suffering systematically ignored. Then the bombshell. Channel 5 has obtained documents showing that on March 3, 2014, a 9-year-old boy named Michael Torres died at St. Patrick's. The official cause was accidental fall. But a witness, another child, told investigators she saw director Dwayne Hammond push Michael down the stairs. Hammond's mugshot, 57 years old, thinning hair, small eyes, a face that could have belonged to anyone's neighbor, a face that had hidden a monster. That witness statement was deleted from CPS records 5 minutes after it was entered, by the same investigator responsible for protecting these children, Robert Hartley's photo. Then the evidence chain. Then 19 years of cover-ups laid bare for millions to see. By 6:23 p.m., St. Patrick's was surrounded by news vans. By 6:41 p.m., Hammond's home address was circulating on social media. By 6:58 p.m., the Minnesota Attorney General announced an emergency investigation. By 7:15 p.m., Robert Hartley was detained at Minneapolis-St. Paul Airport, trying to board a flight to Mexico. And while the world exploded, Jayden Cole lay motionless in his hospital bed, unaware that his past had just become everyone's business, or that 1,600 motorcycles were about to descend on Minneapolis. The first Harley arrived at 7:47 p.m., then 10 more, then 50. Then so many that hospital security called an emergency meeting and the police dispatched 4 extra units just to handle traffic. By midnight, the parking lot of Hennepin County Medical Center had transformed into a chrome ocean. They came from everywhere. Wisconsin, Iowa, Illinois, chapters Victor had never even met. Independent riders who'd heard the story and felt compelled to witness, veterans with patches covering their leather, young prospects with clean cuts, old men with gray beards and decades of road in their bones. 1,643 motorcycles by the official count. 1,643 people who had heard about a homeless boy who dove into frozen water 4 times to save strangers. 1,643 souls who understood sacrifice and wanted to honor it. Victor stood at Jayden's window, watching them arrive. Did you call them? Dr. Vance had appeared beside him. All of them? I called maybe 100. The rest? Victor shook his head. The rest came on their own. Why? Victor thought about that, about brotherhood, about code, about what it meant to be part of something larger than yourself. Because he's one of us now, whether he knows it or not. Outside, the motorcycles gleamed under streetlights. An army assembled for a boy who had spent his whole life invisible. He wasn't invisible anymore. At 7:32 p.m. the next evening, a nurse appeared in the doorway. Mr. Brannon? Victor was on his feet instantly. What is it? He's waking up. 2 words, 7 letters, the most important sentence of Victor's life. He's asking for someone. The nurse's voice was gentle. He keeps saying, the kids. He wants to know if the kids are okay. Victor was already running. Type, he's awake in the comments if you've been waiting for this moment. Jaden's new life is about to begin. Jaden woke up to a world that made no sense. White ceiling, beeping machines, tubes in his arms, and a man, leather-cut tattoos, scarred hands, sitting beside his bed with tears streaming down his weathered face. Jaden's first instinct was to run. He tried to sit up. Pain exploded through his chest. Broken ribs he'd learned later from CPR compressions. His arms were weak, his legs wouldn't respond, and the tubes connecting him to machines pulled tight when he moved. Easy, kid, easy. The man's voice was rough but gentle. Don't try to move too fast. You've been through hell. Jaden's eyes darted around the room, looking for exits, looking for threats. 3 years on the streets had taught him that waking up somewhere unfamiliar meant danger. Waking up with a stranger watching meant worse. Who? His voice cracked, throat raw from intubation. Who are you? My name is Victor. Victor Brannon. The man leaned forward slowly, keeping his hands visible. My kids, Ethan, Connor, Chloe, you saved them at the lake. You pulled them out of the water. The lake. Memories crashed back like a wave. Black water, freezing cold, small bodies in his arms, the 4th dive, the one he wasn't supposed to survive. Are they? Jaden tried to swallow. His mouth was sandpaper. Are they okay? The little one, she was so cold. I couldn't hold her. She slipped and they're perfect, all 3, alive and healthy because of you. Victor's voice cracked. Chloe hasn't stopped asking about the swimming boy. She drew you about 40 pictures. Jaden stared at him. This stranger with tears in his eyes. This man who looked like the kind of person Jaden had learned to avoid on the streets. Big, scarred, dangerous. But there was something in his face, something Jaden hadn't seen directed at him in a very long time. Kindness, real kindness. I don't understand, Jaden whispered. Why are you here? I'm nobody, I'm just... You're the bravest person I've ever met. Victor reached out, placed his hand over Jaden's. The touch was warm, foreign. You went into that water 4 times, your heart stopped. You died on the snow, and they brought you back, and the first thing you asked about was whether my kids were okay. His grip tightened. You're not nobody, Jaden. You matter. Maybe no one ever told you that before. But you do. Something cracked behind Jaden's eyes. Something that had been frozen for 3 years, maybe longer. He felt it splinter, felt the pressure building, felt all the walls he'd built to survive start to crumble. He was so tired of surviving. I don't know how to be anything else, he heard himself say. I don't know how to stop running. Then let me help you. Victor's eyes were fierce. Whatever happened before, wherever you came from, it's over. You don't have to run anymore. You don't know what I came from? I do, actually. Victor's expression shifted, darkened. St. Patrick's, Director Hammond, 47 complaints that got buried. The kid who died in 2014. Jaden flinched like he'd been slapped. How do you? Because I found out. Because I needed to understand why a boy would dive into frozen water 4 times for strangers, why he would smile before that 4th dive, like he didn't expect to come back up. Victor leaned closer. I know what they did to you. I know why you ran. And I swear on my wife's grave or on Rachel's grave, they will never touch you again. Hammond was arrested yesterday. The investigator who covered for him is in federal custody. St. Patrick's is shut down. Jaden's breath caught. What? It's all over the news. The whole country knows your story, knows what you survived, and 1,600 brothers came from across the country to make sure nothing bad happens to you ever again. Jaden's eyes moved past Victor, to the window, to the parking lot below, motorcycles, hundreds of them, maybe thousands, chrome gleaming under morning light, leather-clad figures standing in groups, breath rising in white clouds. They're here for me. His voice was barely audible. But I don't know them. They know you. They know what you did. Victor squeezed his hand. You're not invisible anymore, Jaden. The whole world is watching, and we're all on your side. The walls crumbled. Jaden cried, not quietly, not with dignity. 3 years of frozen tears broke loose all at once, great heaving sobs that shook his broken ribs and tore at his raw throat. He cried for his mother who died with a needle in her arm, for his father who chose a new family over him, For every beating at St. Patrick's, every night on the streets, every moment he'd convinced himself that no one would ever care if he lived or died. And Victor Brannon, president of Hells Angels, Minnesota, a man who had buried his wife and raised 3 children and survived wars both literal and figurative, did the only thing that mattered. He held him, wrapped his arms around that small, broken body and held on while Jaden Cole cried out 3 years of loneliness. "I've got you," Victor whispered. "I've got you, kid. You're safe now. You're home." If this moment is hitting you in the chest, type "home" in the comments. Everyone deserves to hear those words. The children came on day 3. Victor had arranged it carefully, checked with doctors, made sure Jaden was ready as anyone could be to meet the lives they'd saved. Ethan came first, 10 years old, dark hair like his father, his mother's eyes. He walked into the room with careful dignity, but his hands shook and his voice cracked when he spoke. "Hi, I'm Ethan. You saved me. From the lake." Jaden sat up straighter. The bruises on his arms had faded to yellow. His color was better, but he still looked fragile, like something that might shatter if held too tight. "I remember. You were under longest. Second longest, I mean. The little one. Chloe, yeah." Ethan shifted his weight. "I wanted to say thank you, but it feels too small. Like, thank you is what you say for holding a door, not for—" He stopped, swallowed. "Not for dying for someone. I didn't die." "You did, though. Dad said your heart stopped. For almost 4 minutes." Ethan's eyes were wet. "And it was my fault. Because I wanted to go to the stupid lake. Because I made Dad say yes. Because I went on the ice when he told me not to." The words tumbled out, 3 weeks of guilt pouring from a 10-year-old's heart. "And then you were just there. This kid I'd never seen. And you jumped in. You didn't even take off your shoes. And I watched you dive again and again while I stood there, and I couldn't do anything, and Hey." Jaden's voice was soft but firm. "Look at me." Ethan looked, tears streaming. "It's not your fault. None of it. Kids do stupid things. That's what we do." Jaden's jaw tightened. "I've done way stupider things than walking on thin ice. But you almost— I'm here. You're here. Your brother and sister are here." Jaden reached out, took Ethan's hand. The gesture felt foreign. He hadn't touched another person with kindness in 3 years. "We made it. That's what matters." Ethan stared at their joined hands. Then he lunged forward and hugged Jaden so hard it pushed the air from his lungs. "Thank you," Ethan whispered. "Thank you, thank you, thank you." Jaden didn't know what to do with his arms, with the weight of another person pressed against him, with kindness that expected nothing in return. So he just held on. Connor came next, 8 years old, quieter than his brother, more watchful. He brought a book, The Chronicles of Narnia, well worn, and sat in the chair beside Jaden's bed. "I don't know what to say," Connor admitted. "Ethan practiced his speech for 2 days. I didn't practice anything." "That's okay. I don't know what to say either." "Do you like to read?" The question caught Jaden off guard. Yeah, I used to, before." "Before what?" "Before his mother died, before the streets, before survival replaced everything else. Just before." Connor nodded like that made perfect sense. He held up the book. "This is my favorite. Kids who go to a magical world through a wardrobe. There's a lion named Aslan who's brave and scary and good all at the same time." He paused. "You remind me of him." "A lion? Not like roaring or whatever, just—" Connor struggled for words. "Someone asks if Aslan is safe, and the answer is no. He's not safe. But he's good." Connor looked at Jaden. "You're not safe. What you did wasn't safe, but it was good. Really, really good." He held out the book. "I want you to have this." Jaden took it, felt the weight of worn paper and broken spine. "I can't take your favorite book. I have 3 copies. Dad buys me a new one every time I wear one out." Connor smiled, small, shy. "Besides, I think you need it more than me. Hospital's boring. Narnia's not." Jaden looked at the cover. Children and a lion and a world beyond imagination. "Thank you," he said, and meant it. Then came Chloe. She didn't walk into the room. She exploded into it, a 2-year-old hurricane in a pink dress, blonde curls bouncing, blue eyes locked on Jaden like targeting lasers. "Swimming boy!" She launched herself at the bed. Victor caught her mid-flight, redirecting her to a controlled landing on the mattress beside Jaden's legs. "Gentle, Chloe. Jaden's still healing." Swimming boy not broken. Chloe crawled up with Siege Army determination. Swimming boy strong. Jaden found himself smiling. A genuine smile, the first in longer than he could remember. Hi, Chloe. Hi. She plopped into his lap. Zero hesitation, zero fear. I made you pictures. Did you see? Did you like them? I love them, especially the one with the pink girl and the hero boy. That's us, she bounced excitedly. You're hero boy. I'm pink girl. We were in the water, but you saved me. Her tiny hands grabbed his face, turned it toward her. Blue eyes stared into brown with intensity beyond her years. Why did you swim? Water was cold. Chloe members, water was so cold. How do you explain sacrifice to a 2-year-old? How do you tell a child that you jumped because you had nothing to lose? Because the only value your life had was what you could give away? Because you needed help, Jaden said finally. And I could help. So I did. Chloe processed this with philosopher's gravity. Okay, she declared. Then she hugged him. Her arms barely reached around his neck. She smelled like baby shampoo and something sweet. You're my friend now, Chloe announced. Forever and ever. Swimming boy is Chloe's friend. Something cracked in Jaden's chest, something frozen for a very long time. Okay, he whispered. Forever and ever. Victor watched from the doorway. 3 children clustered around a hospital bed, Ethan showing Jaden something on his phone, Connor reading aloud from Narnia, Chloe asleep in Jaden's lap, thumb in mouth, other hand gripping his hospital gown like a lifeline. This was family. Not blood, not paperwork. Choice. Victor pulled out his phone, dialed. Dutch, it's me. Call the lawyers, all of them. For what? Victor watched his children, all 4 of them now, and felt his heart expand in ways he hadn't known possible. I'm going to adopt him. Whatever it takes. Write family in the comments if you believe love is a choice, not a bloodline. This is what belonging looks like. The courthouse smelled of old wood and older decisions. February 28th, 6 weeks after the lake. Jaden sat in the front row wearing a dark blue suit that fit perfectly because Victor had taken him to an actual tailor, an old Italian man named Giancarlo who'd been dressing the club for 40 years. The tie was silver, the shoes pinched, but this was too important for complaints. Beside him sat Ethan, Connor, and Chloe, all in formal clothes, all looking uncomfortable, all refusing to be anywhere else. He's our brother, Ethan had said, even if the papers don't say it yet. Behind them, the gallery was full. Brothers from the club, members from chapters across the state, nurses who had treated Jaden, teachers from Lincoln Middle School who had watched him catch up 3 years of education in 6 weeks, Sandra Mitchell from Channel 5, covering the story she'd helped break. And in the front row on the other side, alone, pale, wishing she were anywhere else, sat Rebecca Marsh from CPS. Judge Eleanor Hastings presided, 64 years old, 23 years on the family court bench, zero tolerance for nonsense. This is a custody hearing for the minor child Jaden Michael Cole. The petitioner, Victor Anthony Brannon, seeks permanent adoption. The state of Minnesota, through Child Protective Services, objects on grounds of criminal history and association with the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club. She looked at Rebecca Marsh. Ms. Marsh, present your case. Rebecca stood, shuffled papers, cleared her throat. Your Honor, the state's position is that placement with a known member of an outlaw motorcycle organization presents unacceptable risks. Has Mr. Brannon been convicted of any crimes in the past 10 years? No, Your Honor, but has there been evidence of criminal activity in the Brannon household? No, Your Honor, however. Has the child expressed fear or concern about this placement? No. In fact, the child has repeatedly stated a preference for, then what specific evidence do you have that this would harm him? Silence. Judge Hastings removed her glasses, rubbed her eyes. Ms. Marsh, I've been doing this job for 23 years. I've placed children with grandparents, aunts, foster families, and yes, people whose lifestyles made others uncomfortable. What I've learned is that children need stability, love, and protection, not perfection. Her gaze moved to Victor. What I see here is a child failed by every system designed to protect him, his mother's addiction, his father's abandonment, an abusive group home that has since been shut down thanks to this very case. For 3 years, this child lived on Minneapolis streets, hungry, cold, alone, because people responsible for his care let him down. She looked at the gallery, at the leather and patches, at tattooed men with wet eyes. And then he saved 3 lives. At 11 years old, he dove into a frozen lake 4 times and died doing it. And the man whose children he saved has spent every moment since trying to give something back. Judge Hastings looked at Jayden. "Young man, I'm going to ask you a question. Answer honestly. Not what you think I want to hear. Not what Mr. Brannon wants. The truth." Jayden straightened. "Yes, ma'am." "Do you want Victor Brannon to be your father?" The courtroom held its breath. Jayden looked at Victor, at Ethan, Connor, Chloe, at the brothers in leather who had become uncles, at the life that had found him when he'd stopped believing life was possible. He thought about the lake, about the 4th dive, about smiling before he jumped because he'd expected to die and hadn't minded. He thought about waking up to a stranger's tears, about a hand holding his in the darkness, about words he'd never expected to hear. "You're not alone anymore." "Yes," Jayden said. His voice was steady, clear. For the first time since the lake, completely sure. "He's already my family. I just want the papers to say it too." Judge Hastings nodded. "Then let the papers say it." She signed the order, and Jayden Cole became Jayden Brannon. The courtroom erupted, not polite applause, an explosion of sound. Brothers on their feet, fists raised, voices booming. Chloe screaming at glass-breaking pitch. Ethan and Connor rushing forward to pile onto Jayden in a group hug that nearly knocked him off his chair. And Victor just stood there for a moment, tears streaming, heart full. Then he walked to his son, his 4th child, the boy who had saved 3 lives and found one of his own. "Welcome home, kid." Jayden hugged him, held on. "Thank you for jumping in after me." "You jumped first." Victor pulled back, met his eyes. "You jumped 4 times. All I did was make sure you had somewhere to land." Outside the courthouse, 1,600 motorcycles roared to life, not in departure, in celebration, an army of thunder announcing to the world that Jayden Brannon had a family now, a family that would fight for him, a family that would never let him fall through the ice again. Type "official" in the comments if you've been waiting for this moment, but the story isn't over yet. There's still one more chapter to go. 6 years later, the graduation cap didn't fit right. Jayden Brannon stood in front of his bedroom mirror, the same bedroom he'd been given that first terrifying night, now covered in band posters, photographs, and a framed copy of the adoption decree that had changed everything. He was 17 years old, taller than Victor by almost 2 inches, shoulders broad from years working on motorcycles with his uncles, hands calloused from honest labor, eyes that still carried shadows but no longer flinched from light. "You almost ready?" Ethan appeared in the doorway. 16 now, already talking about colleges and futures. "This thing starts in an hour, and Chloe's threatening to riot if we're late." "Almost." Jayden adjusted his cap. "This thing keeps sliding off." "That's what bobby pins are for." Ethan walked over, produced 2 pins from his pocket, secured the cap with practiced efficiency. "Marie taught me. Said Mom used to do the same thing at her graduation." Mom. They all called Rachel that now, even Jayden, even though he'd never met her. Her photo hung in the hallway. Her chair still sat in the living room. Her memory wove through their family like golden thread. "You nervous?" Ethan asked. "About walking across a stage?" "No." Jayden met his brother's eyes in the mirror. "About the speech?" Terrified. Valedictorian. 6 years ago, Jayden could barely read at a 4th grade level. Math was a foreign language. Science might as well have been magic. But he'd had help. Tutors Victor arranged. Study sessions with Connor, who could explain anything simply. Late nights at the kitchen table, surrounded by textbooks, fueled by coffee and stubbornness. And slowly, impossibly, he'd caught up. Then passed. Then excelled. "You're going to be fine." Ethan squeezed his shoulder. "You've literally died before. Public speaking should be nothing." Jayden laughed, actually laughed, something that had taken 2 years to come naturally. "When you put it that way." The door burst open. Chloe, 8 years old now, a whirlwind of blonde curls and boundless energy, launched herself at Jayden with missile force. "Jayden, Daddy says it's time. Everyone's waiting. I saved you the good seat, but you have to hurry." Jayden caught her, swung her around, set her down. She was so big now, so different from the tiny pink-clad figure he'd pulled from frozen water. Sometimes he still saw her that way in nightmares, limp and cold, slipping from his grasp. But those nightmares came less often now. "I'm coming, Chloe, just making sure I look okay." "You look beautiful." She grabbed his hand. "Now come on." Some things never changed. If you've been on this journey from the beginning, type graduation in the comments. We're almost at the end. The gymnasium of Lincoln High School had never been so full. Folding chairs stretched across the basketball court, everyone occupied. Parents, grandparents, siblings, the usual graduation crowd. But mixed among them, impossible to miss, were patches of leather and chrome. Brothers from the club, members from chapters across the country. 147 motorcycles in the parking lot. 147, the same number as something else, though Jaden wouldn't make that connection until later. Victor sat in the front row, Chloe bouncing beside him. Connor calm as always, Ethan behind them, phone ready to record. Around them, the brothers spread out in protective formation. Old habits. The ceremony began with usual pomp, the march, the anthem, speeches that ran too long. Jaden sat with his fellow graduates, trying to focus on words being spoken instead of the speech waiting in his pocket. Then, Principal Morrison approached the podium. "And now, it is my great honor to introduce this year's valedictorian. This young man came to Lincoln Middle School 6 years ago with challenges that would have defeated most people. Instead of giving up, he rose. Instead of accepting limitations, he shattered them." She smiled. "Please welcome Jaden Brannon." The gymnasium exploded, not polite applause, an eruption. Brothers on their feet, fists raised, Chloe screaming at glass-shattering pitch, Victor not standing but smiling, a smile bright enough to light the room. Jaden walked to the podium on legs that felt like water. The prepared speech was in his pocket, 3 pages of careful words about perseverance and gratitude. He didn't use it. "When I was 11 years old," Jaden began, voice steady despite trembling hands, "I watched my mother die." The crowd went silent. "Then I was abandoned by my father. Then I was sent to a place that was supposed to protect me, and instead didn't." He gripped the podium. "I spent 3 years living on the streets, sleeping in parking garages, eating from dumpsters, learning that the only person I could count on was myself. I was invisible, forgotten. A problem society had given up trying to solve." His eyes found Victor. "And then I saw 3 kids fall through ice on Lake Harrison." Everyone knew this story. It had been told on news programs, in documentaries, in the book that came out last year. But hearing it from Jaden, in his voice, in this moment, made it new. "I didn't think, didn't calculate risks. I just moved. Because someone needed help and I could give it." His voice cracked. He let it. "I went into that water 4 times. My heart stopped. I died on the snow while strangers tried to bring me back. And I remember thinking, in those last moments, that at least I had finally done something that mattered. At least someone would remember me." He pulled the folded speech from his pocket, looked at it, set it aside. "But I didn't die. I woke up in a hospital room surrounded by people I'd never met, all telling me I was a hero. And one of them, a man in leather with tattoos and scars and the kindest eyes I'd ever seen, said something I'll never forget." Jaden's gaze found Victor again. He said, "You're not alone anymore." The words hung in the air. That's what I want to talk about today. Not perseverance or achievement. I want to talk about seeing, about what happens when someone notices a kid who's drowning in water or loneliness or despair and decides to jump in anyway. He looked at his fellow graduates. Every person in this room has that power, not through something heroic or dramatic, just by noticing, by caring, by saying to someone who feels forgotten, "I see you, you matter, you're not alone." His voice strengthened. "The people who saved me weren't saints. They were bikers, outlaws according to some, men the world had written off. But when I was drowning, really drowning, they pulled me out. They gave me a home, a name, a future." Jaden smiled. "So here's what I know, after 17 years of learning it the hard way. Family isn't about blood. It's about choice. It's about showing up. It's about saying, 'I've got you,' and meaning it, even when it costs you something." He took a breath. "To my father, Victor, thank you for choosing me, for fighting for me, for believing I was worth saving when I didn't believe it myself." Victor's face crumpled, tears streaming. "To my brothers and sister, Ethan, Connor, Chloe, thank you for making room at your table, for treating me like family from day one. Chloe was crying. Connor's jaw was tight. Ethan had given up recording. And to everyone who's ever felt invisible, I see you. You matter. You're not alone. Jaden stepped back. Thank you. The gymnasium erupted, louder than before. Brothers pounding fists on chairs, parents crying, teachers crying, Principal Morrison dabbing at her eyes, and Victor walked to the stage and wrapped his son in a hug that said everything words couldn't. I'm proud of you, he whispered. So proud. I love you, Dad. I love you too, kid. Forever and always. The party at the clubhouse lasted until 3 a.m. Every brother who had ever helped, every family member who had shown up, every friend who had mattered, music thundering, grills smoking, children running between giants, giants dancing with grandmothers. And somewhere in the chaos, Jaden found himself alone on the roof, looking at stars. Thought I'd find you here. Victor climbed through the access hatch, slower than he used to be, 54 now, but still strong, still present. Getting too much down there? Getting to everything. Jaden shook his head. Is that weird? All these people came for me and I needed to escape. Not weird at all. Your brain's still learning to accept good things. They sat in comfortable silence. Below, the party continued, laughter and music and rumbling engines. I got something for you. Victor reached into his jacket, pulled out a small leather bundle. Jaden unwrapped it. A patch, black backing, white stitching, the Death Head logo he'd seen 1,000 times on his uncle's backs. It's not an official member patch, Victor said quickly. You're underage, but it's recognition, honorary. The brothers voted last month, unanimous. Jaden traced the stitching. What does this mean? It means you belong, not as a prospect, as family. Forever. No matter what you do, where you go, who you become. Even if I become a doctor? Even if you become a nun, Victor laughed. Though I'd have questions. Jaden laughed too, then sobered. There's something I want to do with the scholarship, with the future. He hesitated. I've been thinking about it for a while. Tell me. I want to help kids like me, kids who fall through the cracks, kids in bad homes on the streets, in systems that don't care. Jaden turned to face Victor. I want to start something that finds them before they're lost. Tell me more. We call it Jaden's Law, not an actual law yet, a code, a commitment. When we find a kid drowning, we don't look away. We don't wait for the system. We jump in. His words came faster now. The club already does this sometimes, informal. But I want to make it official. Connect with other chapters, other groups, build a network of people who notice. Victor's eyes were wet. You've thought about this. Every day since I woke up in that hospital. Every night since I moved into that bedroom. Jaden held up the patch. This means I belong. But belonging isn't enough. I have to pass it on. Otherwise, what was the point? Victor pulled him into a fierce hug. The point was you, but if you want to build this, I'm with you. The whole club is with you, whatever it takes. Yeah? Kid, you dove into frozen water 4 times for strangers. You think we'll say no to this? They sat together until dawn, father and son, watching the stars fade, planning a future that would save more lives than either could count. 5 years later, Jaden's Law operated in 43 states, 147 children placed with permanent families, some in traditional households, some with motorcycle clubs, some with grandparents, aunts, neighbors, teachers, anyone who saw a child drowning and decided to jump. The numbers kept growing. Chicago, Illinois, December. Marcus didn't know the man's name. He was 10 years old, shivering behind a dumpster on Michigan Avenue. 3 weeks since he'd run from his foster home, 2 days since his last meal, 1 hour since he'd stopped feeling his fingers. The snow kept falling. He'd found a cardboard box to hide in, but the cold seeped through anyway. His coat was too thin. His shoes had holes. And nobody in this entire city of 3 million people had looked at him twice. He was invisible, just like always. Marcus pulled his knees to his chest, tried to remember what warm felt like, tried to imagine a future that wasn't this, wasn't cold and hunger and running and hiding. He couldn't. Maybe this was it. Maybe this was how his story ended, frozen behind a dumpster while holiday shoppers walked past carrying bags full of presents for kids who had homes. He closed his eyes. And then he heard it. Motorcycles, not 1 or 2, dozens, the rumble growing louder, closer, until it filled the alley like thunder. Marcus opened his eyes. A man stood at the entrance, leather cut, patches, gray beard, old but solid. Behind him, a wall of chrome and leather stretched down the alley. The man crouched, made himself small, non-threatening. "Hey, kid." His voice was rough but gentle. "My name's Dutch. I'm with Jaden's Law." Marcus stared. What's Jaden's Law?" "We find kids like you, kids who fell through the cracks, kids the system forgot." Dutch reached into his jacket, pulled out a thermos. "You hungry? Got hot chocolate here, nothing else. Just want to talk." "Why?" "Because a long time ago, a kid just like you jumped into a frozen lake 4 times to save 3 strangers. And when he grew up, he decided that no one should ever have to be invisible again." Dutch held out the thermos. "So here we are, 63 brothers, middle of December, looking for you." Marcus looked at the thermos, at the motorcycles, at this stranger who had appeared like something from a dream. "How did you know I was here?" "Someone noticed, called the hotline. We came." Dutch smiled. "That's how it works. Someone notices, someone calls, and we jump in." Marcus's hand shook as he reached for the thermos. His fingers brushed warm metal, and something inside him cracked, some wall he'd built to survive. "I don't have anywhere to go," he whispered. "You do now." Dutch stood, extended a hand. "Come on, kid. Let's get you warm. Then we'll figure out the rest." Marcus looked at the hand, at the man, at the army of leather and chrome waiting behind him, and for the first time in 3 weeks, for the first time in his life, he believed that maybe, just maybe, someone gave a damn. He took the hand. Dutch pulled him up, wrapped a blanket around his shoulders, guided him toward the waiting motorcycles. "What happens now?" Marcus asked. "Now we find you a family, a real one, people who'll fight for you." "How do you know they're out there?" Dutch smiled, pulled out his phone, showed Marcus a photo, a young man with dark hair and kind eyes, standing in front of a building with Jaden's Law painted on the window. "Because I know the guy who started all this, and if there's one thing he taught me, it's that everyone deserves someone who jumps in." The motorcycles roared to life, and Marcus, cold, hungry, invisible Marcus, rode toward a future he never knew existed. Because someone had noticed, because someone had called, because somewhere in Minneapolis, a boy who had drowned 4 times and lived had made a promise. No more invisible children. Not on his watch. Minneapolis, same night. Jaden's phone buzzed at 11:47 p.m. He was in his office at Jaden's Law headquarters, surrounded by case files and cold coffee. 22 years old now. Law school applications on his desk, wedding photos on his wall. He'd married his college sweetheart 6 months ago. Victor was healthy. Ethan was in medical school. Connor was teaching English abroad. Chloe was 13 and threatening to become a marine biologist or a rock star, depending on the day. And 147 children had found families because Jaden had decided to keep jumping. He looked at his phone. A text from Dutch, found another one. "Chicago. Kid named Marcus. He's safe." Jaden smiled. 148. He walked to the window. The Minneapolis skyline glittered in the darkness. Somewhere out there, a boy he'd never meet was riding toward a new life. Because Jaden had drowned. Because Victor had screamed for one more shock. Because 1,600 motorcycles had taught an invisible boy that he mattered. Because family was a choice. And Jaden Brannon chose to keep choosing every single day for every invisible child the world had forgotten. His phone buzzed again. Another hotline call. Another kid in trouble. Jaden reached for his jacket. Time to jump in. The end.